I think this teaching is encouraging us to honestly, and not in a neurotic way, to face up to the bad tendencies that we have within us. Our capacity for addiction, our capacity for rage, our capacity for cruelty, our capacity for mindless stupidity. We have these tendencies. And sometimes, especially if we enter the spiritual training, if we're making the effort to be good, then it could happen that, there's some kind of reaction, and that then a sort of like a resistance comes up. And so we have these beautiful, wonderful teachings and prescriptions that are given to us, and we find there's something within us that is actually resisting. So like if we know I should try to be mindful all the time, and something, within me that says, oh, I just want to open my phone and find some funny cat videos or something and spend, 10 minutes watching, something silly and funny just to give the mind a rest, because there is that within us. So we got to be actually vigilant. We need to actually realize that our resistance and those tendencies are definitely an impediment to making progress on the path. If you have time, recently I was on a long personal retreat, and I spent time. I had a lot of time. I had unlimited amounts of time. And the mind, just was, there were so many subtleties, and like what could come up or what could be seen. It was like, like my mind was like talking to me and telling me things in through like images, and it was just so fascinating and so interesting. And like this voice within, this opportunity to look inside and to see what's really going on. Then I'm sorry to say that coming out of retreat and facing a much more of a busy schedule with a lot of things to do and many things to organize, it's like getting involved in work. It's almost like work is my drug addiction is to be addicted to work, and to use working to hide out from being present to explore within. So then, whatever it may be for you, those things that that are not skillful, not really beneficial, not really forward-thinking, eventually your practice is going to come to a state where you see and experience what it's like when those negative tendencies have dropped away. Even if they've dropped away temporarily, or maybe you've got one big chunk of negative tendency, like I have, with respect to a particular person, there's a big karmic complex, something negative and difficult and complicated with that person. And then through our growth in the path and our practice and our sila and our efforts, something happens and that shifts, and that whole burden of that particular complex drops, and it just drops like a rock, and it's it's actually gone. It's not, that one is not coming back. Okay. But then later on, when we see then something else comes up that pushes our button and causes that kind of reactivity to come along. When we've developed, fear comes up, conscience comes up. We don't want that. And in that way, we see that thing as being like a corruption. This process of the destruction of the asavas has, I think, a very long, gradual path through developing the Eightfold Noble Path, developing our right view, developing our ethics, and developing the aspects of the meditation practice, learning how to gradually, bit by bit, have the agency that we find out we don't have to be like the victim of our minds. We don't have to be the victim of our thoughts or the victim of our emotions, but instead we've got a kind of like a choice about it. We can welcome those thoughts and entertain them and stay with them and develop them. Or we can see them clearly, seeing the danger, and then just letting them go. I want to read a quotation. The destruction of the asavas at the end is described as what the Buddha attained, and what every arahant, every fully enlightened person has attained. He repeatedly reported how, after going through his long spiritual journey, the Buddha attained the 4 jhanas step by step. And then, on the basis of the 4th jhana, does anybody, maybe you need to know what the jhanas are. In the last point on the Eightfold Noble Path, it's called Sama Samadhi, or right concentration, or right unification of the mind. And that's invariably given a standard description of the 4 jhanas. In the first jhana, the mind is accompanied by applied thought and sustained thought, meaning the mind is connecting with an object. It could be like a loving kindness, or it could be breath, or several other suitable objects for meditation. And the mind we experience being secluded from sensual craving or sensuality, secluded from the unwholesome states of mind. And then within that state of having landed on the object of meditation, being separated from the unwholesome states, then the mind has gained such tremendous clarity and peace and calmness. And with that, a very distinctive bliss and happiness arises. So that's the characteristic in the first jhana. Then gradually through the second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, there's a change in the feeling tone. So in the second jhana, the applied thought and sustained thought drops off. That means instead of like always being aware, like breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, this instead of having that connection to the object, that becomes like too much of a burden, and that just kind of like stops and becomes still. And then you've got a much more like a simple unified state. The mind is still got that bliss and happiness. And then in the third jhana, the bliss drops away, and you experience a kind of a happy tranquility. And then in the fourth jhana, this is where the Buddha's the jumping off point in the standard description that we see in the suttas. In the fourth jhana, one has gone beyond pleasure and pain, beyond physical pleasure and pain, and beyond mental pleasure and pain, with the factor of equanimity becoming very powerful, and the factor of mindfulness becoming extremely powerful. So this is a state that's extremely still, extremely clear, extremely equanimous, but it has that quality of neutrality, being withdrawn from those sensory contacts that are giving rise to pleasant and unpleasant feelings. That's all like withdrawn. The mind's gone within itself. It's very still. So then within that state, and this is also on top of, if we're talking about our Sammasambuddha, he did a lot of other preparations before that. He went through many lifetimes as a bodhisattva, developing the perfections of the wholesome qualities, and to an extreme level. And then he came into this life, and from the very moment when he was born, even as a little baby, he was already the bodhisattva who was destined for awakening. He was a genius with a powerful meditative tendency. Even when he was young, when he was a child, he spontaneously entered into jhana as a young child, sitting in the under the rose apple tree during the plowing festival. The story goes that he stayed in that state of deep meditation as a little child, and the sun, the shadow, even though the hours were going by a miracle, he was always within the shadow of the tree, and he didn't come to be in the sun while he was sitting. He started with other, he became disenchanted with the life of luxury in the palace. He visited the greatest meditation teachers, the greatest spiritual teachers of his time. He mastered everything that those teachers had to offer, and saw the shortcomings and limitations of the best of what was offered by the other spiritual seekers of the time. And then he attempted extreme self-mortification, starving himself, which was one of the spiritual practices given at the time. At the end, he and you know what, the Buddha, this is part of why we love the Buddha, right? He had this intelligent compassion that was not able to look around and and see the suffering of this world and just be complacent and say, well, that's the way it is. Human beings are suffering. Oh, that's the way it is. They die. Oh, it's just he didn't accept the inevitability of the suffering of beings, but instead went on this quest, this pursuit, to discover if there could be a way for the end of suffering, for the end of dukkha. So he developed his meditation up to the fourth jhana. He developed three knowledges in succession. He was aware of his own past lives, going back endlessly. He was aware of how how beings are reborn according to their karma, according to the actions of beings. They get reborn in the corresponding state. And then the third knowledge that he gained was the liberation from the asava of sensuality, of becoming, and of ignorance. His mind was liberated. There comes the knowledge, it's liberated. I want to read you, let's see if I can find it. I want to read you a beautiful sutta quotation that's describing it. Here we go. Those who are here got to read it already this morning, but we'll listen to it again. So, the mind is immersed in samadhi, purified, bright, flawless, rid of corruptions, pliable, workable, steady, and imperturbable. Then he extended and projected toward the knowledge of the ending of defilements, the ending of the asavas. They truly understand these are the asavas. This is the origin of the asavas. This is the cessation of the asavas. This is the practice that leads to the cessation of the asavas. So this is the Four Noble Truths directed towards those asavas, those taints. Knowing and seeing like this, the mind is freed from the defilement of sensuality, the desire to be reborn, and ignorance. When they're freed, they know they're freed. They understand rebirth is ended. The spiritual journey has been completed. That which had to be done has been done. There is no return to any state of existence. Suppose that in a mountain glen there was a lake that was transparent, clear, and unclouded. A person with good eyesight, standing on the bank, would see the mussel shells, gravel, and pebbles, the schools of fish swimming about or staying still. They'd think, this lake is transparent, clear, and unclouded, and here are the mussel shells, gravel, and pebbles, and schools of fish swimming about or staying still. In the same way, when the mind has become immersed in samadhi like this, purified, bright, flawless, rid of corruptions, pliable, workable, steady, and imperturbable, they extend it and project it towards knowledge of the ending of defilements. I love in that particular quotation the metaphor of the clear lake. because the person who is looking is not swimming in the water, they're outside of the water looking into it. So there's this combination of clear seeing and a kind of a detachment. I can give you my own metaphor about how this works. While I was on my retreat in the forest over here at the Aranya Bodhi Hermitage on the coast over there in the redwood forest, things in the forest are constantly decomposing and decaying. The redwood forest is in a way, a very brutal teacher about impermanence. If you have like your precious things, your books or your clothing or your gear, whatever the precious things are, and you keep them in a forest, it doesn't actually take very long for them to get moldy and mildewed and nasty and start to decompose, and you can't really use them anymore. We've had quite a few trees have fallen down, and one of the things I was doing was picking up some of a brush from the fallen trees to make my trail look more aesthetic. And the brush that's already been down for a few years, when I picked it up, it just falls apart and crumbles in the hand. It's not even necessary to cut it up and burn it or do something to destroy it. You just have to kind of squish it, and it sort of starts to go back into the earth, because everything is decomposing like that. And in one way, if you look at it from above, there's the cycle of birth and death in the forest. We can see the tree, which was so mighty and so magnificent and tall, 100 feet tall, massive oak tree, and now it's come down, and now it's turned into dust, and then gone into the soil. And then we have certain kinds of wildflowers that like to grow in a very rich humus made of a great quantity of decomposed organic material. So on one occasion, I was pulling away some of these decomposed, rotting pile of branches, and then underneath them was two blooming trillium flowers, which are a very rare flower. Oh, beautiful. See how that which has rotted away has become a flower. So that's like the perspective standing above it. But then there's a different kind of perspective standing in it, which is like to be like a bird or a squirrel or an insect or an animal in the forest, and then you're all the time trying to survive, trying to exist, looking for food. Where's the next thing I'm going to eat? Am I going to be destroyed? Watching out for the predator who's off to get me, looking out for the prey that I can kill. And so then there's this other like kind of state, like being on the inside, caught up in this web of this process of life, which is terrible. So the person who's caught in the asavas is trapped in this stream of becoming and compelled to keep on participating in the rat race, subjected to tremendous amounts of stress. But when the asavas are destroyed, that's the clinging and the craving, then one can be sort of like looking from the outside and not separated from the flow of life in the sense of being without compassion, without humanity, without kindness, without connection, but nevertheless separated in a way that we're just not part of the rat race. I mentioned that about the fourth jhana. A few of the suttas give different, well, many of the suttas give samadhi in a context of the gradual training. So somebody is an ordinary untaught person, and they happen to hear the Dhamma, and they kind of have this wake up, and they realize that the life they've been living, the life in the rat race, is not what they want. And then they decide to go forth from that. They develop their right view. They develop their beautiful morality. They practice the Brahma Viharas, the loving kindness, the divine states of being. They practice generosity. They hear about the marks of existence, about all things are impermanent, all things in samsara are not satisfactory, that's none of them is the final refuge, and that there's no self to be found that one can depend on. Clarifying that view, gradually getting more agency, like being able to choose the ethical or the skillful, the kind, to live a life which is based on renunciation, kindness, non-harming, non-cruelty. And then all of that, the inner purification, the purification of the negative states, learning how to see and recognize negative states, learning that actually it's possible. I don't have to be the victim of my negative mind states. I can choose. I can prevent those states from coming. I can be mindful. And then coming to samadhi. So then, but this meditative states are invariably given as the immediate precondition for the destruction of the asavas. So, as I understand what's explained in the early Buddhist texts, in the suttas, you can't do it without meditation. Most commonly explained in terms of the four jhana. I found one sutta that does it where it mentions metta meditation as being the precondition for the destruction of the asavas. And I found one sutta that specifically mentions the meditation on the breath as being the precondition for enlightenment. And I found a couple of suttas that mentions 9 levels of meditation as being the precondition for the destruction of the asavas. And those 9 levels are the 4 jhanas, and then 4 immaterial meditations, and then the cessation of feeling and perception, which is those last, the immaterial meditation and the cessation of feeling and perception, are states that people who have the aptitude, I suppose, for meditation, and who have the conditions in life that are supportive for that, may develop those meditations, which were known outside of the Buddhist asana. They were known to other schools. I understand from reading a contemporary scholarship about those particular suttas that something came up during the commentarial period after the Buddha's lifetime, where some of the monastics were meditation specialists who were able to do the full spectrum of meditation, and others were merely doing the jhanas. And there was some kind of a competition within the Sangha, and those who had the 9 levels thought that like their enlightenment was better than the other enlightenment. But basically, I learned enough to, if you happen to come across these suttas, you don't have to be confused about it, because I'm going to send you a link to the article that explains that this was something that possibly may have evolved later on. And the thing that I do want you to realize is, if you don't yet have the ability to enter meditation when you want to, and to be stable to develop that unification of the mind, it may be that something is stopping you from being able to go there. And this should be your important priority, is to find out what it is that's blocking you from being able to go to deeper meditation, and get a good meditation coach or a teacher, and make the effort, because it seems that according to the early texts, that's the most obvious way to get there. And when you get there, you will be like a person who once fell into a cesspit and then got rescued and pulled out of the cesspit and got to get cleaned up and recover from that experience and get a clean outfit. And then your friends would go and say, well, would you like to go in the cesspit again? And you'd say, oh, no, thank you. I'm not going there. It's completely gone. I have no wish to go any place close to jumping in that cesspit. So this is my brief introduction. I have many things to tell you later on as time goes by, the next couple of days. But I'd like to take the next few minutes before we go into meditation and see if anybody would mention their questions or comments to what I've explained so far. And those in the room may also offer a comment or a question. If you have one, you'll have to come up here and speak to the mic if you want to ask a question. Damon.
Thank you for this introduction. My question is, the last point you made was the stressing of getting your meditation practice, let's just say, down pat. And that like having a teacher, you mentioned that, the importance of that. And once you're with the teacher, the idea is to, at the very least, get a firm grip on simple shamatha praxis of just breathing and paying attention to that, learning how to concentrate on it, real basics.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in the suttas, the meditation is given in a way that's very formulaic, and you can learn the formulas in a way to maybe have a checklist that you can, if you want to ask yourself at some point, like, where am I at with this? But in actual practice, it's not happening in such a formulaic way. So developing the four foundations of mindfulness, and it's the shamatha vipassana is actually blending together. And so you got to know, like, if you are falling too much towards distraction, you want more shamatha. If you're falling too much toward dullness, you want more vipassana. But you're actually developing the two of them together, and not making it really complicated. I would say, whatever we're doing, whatever we're trying to do, however we live our life, and however we practice meditation, is the mind becoming more calm and more clear, and if your practice is taking you in that direction, then keep going. And if our life or the way that we're practicing is causing us to be stressful, or to have a muddy mind, or a distractible mind, or something like that, then somehow we just haven't gotten a hold of it the right way. And we've got to try to tweak our practice towards just favoring whatever way of practicing is supporting that calmness and that clarity. That's kind of like keeping it as simple as possible. And also taking a course whenever you get a chance for, if you get a chance for a meditation retreat, and like in the olden days when you could go to a retreat center and be there in person and have an environment that really supports doing sitting and walking meditation for many hours a day, under the instruction of somebody who knows what they're talking about, not just some Dhamma teacher who was been practicing for a couple of years and they're a good talker, but somebody who's realized, who's got a profound practice, who's got some accomplishments, so you really can respect and look for the opportunities to sit with teachers like that. Ren, and then Nisha. Ren first, and then Nisha.
Okay, thank you, Ayya. Like I said early on, definitely that's what I really, really miss doing, is to have a stable meditation practice, which I want to do. The question I have is about, I was listening to a YouTube channel of discussion about early sutta, from a Theravada tradition as well. And it's not just the first time I heard this, but I heard it at various different times previously. That so and so, I can't remember the name, was in the presence of the Buddha, was able to hear certain explanation of the Dhamma from the Buddha, and entered stream entry, for example, or was enlightened. So I wonder about the mechanism of that, or how that came about. So it wasn't exactly meditation. Now, is it because it was in the presence of the Buddha, or is there also, like, in addition to meditation, or in that there's another way, kind of like the sudden enlightenment, like a Zen approach, sort of? Is that what that incident or that story was about? And what do you feel about the two approaches, if indeed there are two approaches at all?
As far as I know, some of the persons who obtained that sudden enlightenment upon encountering the teachings, not even meeting the Buddha, but just hearing a few sentences of what the Buddha taught, caused Asaji to attain like stream entry. But he had been meditating for a long time. So they have a practice, they have meditation. They've been striving and seeking, and so they've set up like many preconditions for awakening. Then you have other people who meet the Buddha, and they hear the Dhamma teachings, and they kind of say, is that so? And then walk away. So those people, have not done the work beforehand that would have, prepared their mind to be able to receive and gain that benefit. And then there are many teachings that we see where actually first the Buddha teaches them about heaven. And these would be people who are like maybe with not a very moral lifestyle, who are having the luxurious and maybe corrupted lifestyle in the palace, something like that. And first, getting the basic right view about karma and causation, getting your morality squared away, learning to practice loving kindness, and understanding the hindrances or the factors of the mind that are like making trouble internally, the psychological impediments, and learning how to take care of those. Up to that point, that's the teaching up as far as heaven. If you could get all of that together, and if you didn't lose it and you happen to die right then, you would be aiming for heavenly rebirth. And then that also is that like heaven, and your life would be sort of like heaven on earth, because you're filled with love, you're good, you don't have any remorse, you're like psychologically fit, you've known how to take care of your psychological defilements and so forth. So you've got this good, beautiful, like spiritually healthy life. And then the Buddha says the person at that level is able to enter meditation and able to, and then coming out of meditation, they would able to hear the Four Noble Truths and really understand it. When you took a college course in Buddhism, maybe you heard the Four Noble Truths was the first thing you heard about. But actually, this is describing, you could spend several years in a sort of like cleaning up your act before you're ready to even hear it. So I I know that they say that there is what's called dry insight, which is based on a person who's not able to fully obtain shamatha or fully obtain jhana. They're practicing vipassana meditation probably, and investigating internally, investigating the Dhammas. So that's a possibility, but it's not the most common or the most direct or the most likely way to do it. Nisha.
Thank you, Ayya. My question is about, I find asavas and unwholesome mental factors, or akushala dhammas, as they say. Both these asavas and akushala dhammas, they appear same to me. Have I got that correct? Please clarify.
Thank you. Yes, you see the same factors on several different lists. So, for example, sensual craving, kamachanda, is one of the 5 hindrances. And they say that if you're able to enter the first jhana, or if you're able to develop meditation, you can temporarily cut off that hindrance of sensual craving. And that would be compared to mowing the grass. Then if you are having this conversion, having these noble attainments, and there is a fetter of it's called kama raga. It's the same thing as the fetter of sensuality. And at one of the levels of awakening, that becomes drastically weakened, and then it disappears completely. And that would be like pulling it up by the roots and burning the seed so that it's never coming back. So it's the same factor, but it's appearing in a different context. And then the asavas, I'm going to get into this in one of my talks tomorrow, probably. It seems that the fetters, which are listed in explaining the different stages of enlightenment, maybe like a development or an expansion of the idea of the asavas. So the asavas and the fetters are really like almost the same thing. It's just that in some suttas you see 10 fetters, and in some suttas you see 3 asavas. But they're really the same thing, just described a little bit differently. If we can try to control those negative akusala dhammas that arise in the mind, especially during meditation and then outside of meditation, I think you might have experienced this, where if you allow the akusala dhammas to run rampant outside of meditation, and then you go and try to sit for meditation, you'll have a terrible meditation. So we almost, find ourselves trying to become very clean and nice in our everyday life, all day long, being quite just being good, and being careful with the kind of thoughts that we entertain, because then our lifestyle is conducive to having success in meditation. And then it also goes the other way around, that as a result of meditation, comes different kinds of insights, and because of those insights, then your like attitude towards things that happen in life is transformed, and so then one would not be triggered anymore, and so the Akusala Dhammas don't come out anymore because you're not carrying a lot of negative tendencies around with you all the time, because your insight has at a deep level reversed some of those underlying negative tendencies. I compare that to if I had a resentment and I didn't take care of it, maybe I suppress it so that I'm not actually embarrassing myself by losing my temper, but I'm just carrying this in the back of my mind. That's like carrying a loaded gun. And then something happens later, a different thing happens, and then it gets triggered and bang, it goes off. That's like but if I'm able to take care of it, every negative thought that comes along, if I can really take care of it, really see it clearly, really understand the danger, really clean it out, really understand, like what was I clinging to that caused me to be so threatened that I became angry or something like that, and saying, oh, I don't have to cling to that, I can let it go, and really experiencing that deep cleaning. Then what happens is it's like the gun is not loaded, and then if something happened that's extremely aggravating, and when you can feel there's a triggering, you still have the same psychology, that you still have the psychology of a human, and so then there's a trigger, but it's just like click, it just goes off, and it doesn't go off because there's no ammo, because of the work that you've done with your insight. So there's a whole process, and the process we're doing at the beginner stage is clearing out the underbrush, so that then we have a chance for greater and greater subtlety of insight. And then it's the clear seeing and the insight that supports the breakthrough to the noble levels. So the same thing is happening. It's like a spiral, happens again and again. Okay, Maureen. Muted. You're muted.
There we are. I think I'm going along a path that's more vipassana, and I think of everyday life as being the opportunity for meditation. It is a meditation in all that you do, and the insights that you might get from sitting on a cushion or the divine abodes can arm you to deal with everyday life. And I don't know that I will ever get to the most high levels of jhana at all, but I do find it helpful in my everyday life to be thinking in that way, that it is an opportunity for meditation, because of the awareness that you've kind of developing all the time. It's not good enough to be sitting on a cushion and have these ideas. They've got to be seamless with your everyday life. That's where I'm coming from on this.
So for how many years have you been practicing, Barbara? Maureen?
Well, I mean, it was starting with Bhante G, and that was like a long time ago now.
Like since 1970 or so, you've been practicing the Dhamma?
I started with Zen, because that was the first the contact I had with Buddhism. But I just didn't go with all that ritualistic way of doing things. And then I thought I'll go back to what was it like? The Theravada way seemed to be going to the very roots of what the Buddha was teaching, without cultural overlays of Japan or wherever. But I mean, I've really lapsed on meditating, and I've really got to do that to kind of get myself centered, and it's more like dependent origination. You know, that cycle going round and round and round. We live our lives. We live from the moment we're awake, and we're not meditating on a cushion, you know, all the time.
I think the point that I was trying to draw out, because I know you, I've known you for a long time, is that when we practice, then there is this progress of this synthesis and integration of listening to the Dhamma, reflecting on the Dhamma, doing our meditation practice and our everyday life. And they all become integrated into one unified thing, so that the way we live our entire life is integrated with the Dhamma. So I would not say that it's because well, certainly not because your practice is shallow, that you emphasize vipassana and not so much shamatha. I think it's because you've made the effort, and you've gained it, and you've integrated it with the life that you're leading. There's a certain idea that this may come out later. We're in this world, and we have so many interconnections and relationships with beings in this world. So it's not correct that this practice, or that like a noble attainment, would cause one to become isolated, like an atom, separated from everything else. And in fact, the development of this sensitivity, it's like through causation, we're connected with everyone. However, nevertheless, I think we should just consider in the text, in the early text, it does emphasize meditation. And even the Buddha practiced meditation. I mean, he's already done it all. He practices meditation for a pleasant abiding. And those who are not yet awake practice meditation to find the space for awakening. And so I guess I'm encouraging us to consider that if we're involved with daily life and not so much involved with meditation, we should do more meditation. That's my understanding of what the Buddha recommends. So let's take a break for 5 minutes. I'd like to welcome you to stand up and stretch your body a little bit so that then you can come back at, let's say, take a 7-minute break and come back at 20 minutes past the hour, depending on what time zone you're in. And then we'll sit together for meditation.
Thank you, Ayya. It's so nice to have you to talk to, because I can be very open with you as to where I'm coming from, and it's very helpful. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Should we do a share screen? Oh, is Matthew here? Coming to an upright and balanced posture. Arranging the legs in a way that's comfortable and stable. Feeling the weight of the body resting on the seat or the cushion. Feeling the upright spinal cord. Imagine a string at the crown of the head, very gently lifting up. So that the breath can flow very easily. And taking a couple of long, deep breaths to help settle the mind. Breathing in long, breathing out long. Breathing in long. Breathing out long. And then just letting the breath go by itself. Letting the breaths be at the center of awareness. anything else that comes along. Another sensation, a thought. Can just stay in the background, keeping the breath in front. Or just ignoring everything else except the breath. Making breath the one thing. Noticing where in the body it's easy to notice breath. And letting awareness rest in that place. And awareness can spread out from the spot where the breath is most clear. Noticing other spaces that are also touched by the breath. Like from the chest to the shoulders and the belly. Experiencing the rise and fall of the breath. Gently spreading out to touch the entire body. Keeping breath in mind. We'll do a brief chanting of the puja. And after that, you're welcome to return to your meditation. Stay on with your meditation until we join together in the morning. I'm technically, ever since my retreat, I've become incompetent on the computer. Yeah, I'm trying to I exit full screen, it will work. Yeah, there we go. Got it. I got it. I'm going to let you. You're welcome to direct your awareness towards the Buddha Rupa that you have in your room, or else you can direct awareness to the image that you can see on the screen. Ayya, so Savakoto Bhagavata Subharivanno Bhagavata
Namami.
Please have a tranquil and peaceful evening, and we will see you in the morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Ayya.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.